So I downloaded Tinder when I was 18, and being single in a big city, I ended up going on a lot of fun dates. One guy really caught my attention because, well, he was really attractive. We chatted a bit, and I felt pretty into him, so I decided we could meet for coffee. He was sweet, charming, and we had a great conversation about school, art, and music. We found out we were both musicians, and the date was going so well that I agreed to walk the few blocks back to his house so he could play some music for me. I was new to online dating and was still fairly naive, so I followed him into his weird converted garage bedroom and sat down on the couch while he pulled out his keyboard. He played for a while, and I started getting a little antsy. He was super into the music and kinda getting aggressive with the keyboard. He was slamming keys down and making these weird noises. So I shot up and out of my seat and told him that I should get going soon. He totally went back to normal. His tone changed, and his posture became less hunchbacked. So when he apologized for getting carried away, I agreed to sit back down on the couch so we could talk more. He came and sat down next to me, and we went back to our earlier conversation. He seemed back to normal and nice. So when he asked if he could kiss me, I agreed. He leaned in toward me, and I closed my eyes waiting. And I waited but didn't feel his lips, so I opened my eyes and peeked and saw him staring at me. I threw my head back surprised, but he had snaked his hand back toward my hair and interwoven his fingers so I couldn't move. He then inhaled deeply and told me, "You smell like you're Jewish. I can tell because you smell like my aunt's house." I was totally freaked out at this point, partly because yes, I am Jewish, and tried to wiggle away from him, frantically stating that I had to go. He then jumped on top of me, and to my horror started sobbing, yelling that he's so sorry he made me feel uncomfortable. His body weight was completely preventing me from moving, so I forced myself to rub his back. I told him that I wasn't uncomfortable at all, and that he was really sweet. He made me promise over and over again that I'd see him again before finally getting up off of me. I moved to the door and tried calmly to tell him that I really needed to go. He was blocking my way, and all I could think of was that I needed him to let me leave. I couldn't fight him off. He told me I needed to kiss him before I could leave, and I quickly pecked him on the lips. He smiled at me, and I was glad that he didn't expect more. "Call me, please. I think that went well," he said, as he opened up the garage door and I scurried out. I called my mom and started crying as soon as I was far enough away. She called me a cab home, and I blocked him from every way we had contacted each other. I saw him once after that on campus, and that was enough for me, so I hope we never meet again. We very loosely had mutual friends. He was friends with my old roommate, who I no longer was in contact with for very different reasons. I found out after that he knew her because he sold her drugs. I did in fact contact the police. This happened when I was 18. I'm 22 now. Nothing more came out of it. He did share that he had really bad anxiety. However, I was not aware that he was self-medicating with drugs, which were probably the cause of this incident. Last I heard, he was in another state growing weed, and hasn't tried to contact me in almost 2 years. A little while back, I decided I needed to get back out there and start trying to meet people. Not necessarily actively looking for a relationship, but meeting people at the bars just wasn't working for me. So, as most single college girls, I downloaded a dating app. I met a lot of people and talked to them online, and it gave me the confidence to try to actually go out on a date every now and then. I didn't meet up with many of these guys in person, but there were a few. Most didn't lead to a second date, but there was that one that was worse than the rest. I met this guy, Alex, and we made plans to go out to dinner. He said he wanted to take me to this nice restaurant in the town between us, but when the day came, He never answered his phone. The next day he contacts me with a story about getting stuck at work and forgetting his phone at home. Whatever. Excuses. I wasn't really buying it, but he asked to reschedule. Stupidly enough, I said yes. So the day comes, and he tells me to meet him at his house, and he will drive us to this restaurant that he made reservations at. He said to come hungry like 3 times, and kept reminding me not to eat beforehand. I guess this place has big plates. Now, I don't really like meeting people for the first time at their home, or getting into their car, but we had been talking for over a week, so I figured, what the hell. But when I got close, and he calls and tells me to park in the parking lot down the road. Weird, but okay. Small driveway, I guess. Trouble is, I never told him what kind of car I drove, but he pulled into the parking lot right behind me and texted saying he was parked 2 spots down. So I get in his car, against my better judgment, and we start heading for the restaurant. Now, I don't know where we were exactly. I'm not really familiar with this town, but I know the restaurant we were heading to, and it shouldn't have been more than like 10 minutes away on a major highway. But almost 25 minutes later, we're driving down some dark back road. So I looked at him and said, "Hey, where the hell are we going anyway?" He proceeded to tell me that he hadn't told me the full story. Apparently, when he had called to make reservations, it took 3 times of calling before they actually answered. And when someone finally did answer, they told him they had moved locations and given him a description of where they were now located, like the intersection. My stomach dropped when I realized we had passed that intersection probably 5 minutes before this point, and I realized that he didn't have an address punched into his GPS, even though the GPS was running. So I pulled up my GPS, punched in the name of the restaurant, and it said the business was closed for the day. At this point, yes, I know I was being stupid, but I stayed, and we hung out and talked, got to know each other. Still, the way he went about things was kind of creepy. When he couldn't find the restaurant, he just kind of said, "Don't worry, I know a place we can go," and drove further into the darkness, eventually pulling over to a trail in the woods, and told me we had to walk the rest of the way. He said we were going stargazing. The spot was beautiful and all, but the whole way through the woods to the clearing, he just kept cracking jokes about how he swore he wasn't a serial killer or something, and telling me to promise I wasn't going to steal his keys and take the car and leave him there. I'm not sure how to explain this, but through half the night, he just kept lying to me. He would tell me these big, elaborate, detailed stories, and then suddenly end with, "Just kidding, that never happened." It was funny the first time when he tried to convince me he got so drunk one night in college that he got his penis pierced. But after 2 hours of this shit, I realized he had just been kidding about almost everything he had said. I realized I didn't even really know any true things about this guy. We were talking about going to watch a movie at his house. He was all for it, and then apparently changed his mind and pulled the car over in front of a park suddenly on the way back. He said he'd rather stay here. He kept trying to dare me to run naked through the park and asking me weirdly sexual, personal questions, like about specific experiences, not even general thoughts or preferences. Suddenly, he demanded to know if I was going to kiss him or not before the night was over, and said he wanted to put on chapstick first. This guy literally made me dig through my purse looking for chapstick, while he sat in the driver's seat, making a big show of licking his lips, and trying to subtly rub his dick through his pants, but I saw. I told him I didn't have any chapstick, so he said that was fine, but why don't you crawl on over here and show me what you got? Cue patting his lap. I told him I didn't think I was comfortable with that, and he then proceeded to reach around me and try to drag me into his lap, using my butt as leverage. I told him again that I had no intentions of sleeping with him or anyone on a first date, and he again said that was fine, But how about a little 2-minute preview? Q dragging my hand into his lap. I got mad at this point. This was after he had spent days telling me how much he hates men who try to force themselves upon women, and how he doesn't understand how anyone could do that, let alone get pleasure from it. This after he said he didn't want to sit too close to me while we were stargazing, so he didn't make me feel uncomfortable. It was like a switch had flipped. I told him that trying to force me wasn't going to make me any more likely to agree, and that I thought he was supposed to be a gentleman, like he'd been telling me all night he was. He told me that he thought I was just scared of how big it was, and that if I didn't want to suck it, there were other options. Again tries to grab my hand. I told him again that it wasn't going to happen, and he pouted about it. I was racking my brain trying to think of an excuse to get him to drive me back to my car, when he pulled out his phone, opened a text message thread. He wasn't hiding it. I could see that the last 3 messages were ones sent by him, and then looks at me and says that he got a text from his uncle that he lived with, saying that something had happened at the house and he needed to get home ASAP. I'm done at this point, regardless, but I hate being lied to. If you weren't having a good time, you could have just asked to call it a night. Why lie? Why make up false intentions, and then deliberately act the exact opposite way of what you said? Just why? To make things worse, he dropped me off at my car in a dark parking lot at midnight, and then just drove off before I had even walked to my car. Obviously, there wasn't going to be a second date. But, the kicker, I drove by the old location of the restaurant a few days ago. It never moved. It's still open and right on the highway. And his house is about 2 minutes down the road. Where the hell was he taking me? So, creepy Alex from Bumble, let's not meet again. This is the first time I have ever posted in Let's Not Meet. I keep reading all these dating horror stories, and it being Valentine's Day and all, it had me recall a nearly forgotten first date with a guy my friend Mark fixed me up with. I had known the guy a little because he worked with my friend at a local music store. He seemed cool, and he was actually pretty good looking. The first time we had met was at an ICP concert that we all had attended. The guy who we will call Mike was pretty normal on the surface, and through Mark got my number and called me. We went out on a date, and as the night drew on, he asked me if I minded if we just go hang out at the local park and chat because we had been at a super busy loud bar that had a band playing. I was 19 and highly stupid back then, so I agreed to it. It was in the summer and wasn't yet dark, so I wasn't thinking it seemed weird. As we were just chatting, he leans in and kisses me, and I look around realizing it had gotten really dark. I'm in heaven because at this point, he hasn't given me any reason to think he's a creeper. We had a great night. He was charming and funny, and we had a ton in common. Then after our first kiss, he gets this creepy grin. He looks out the window, then says to me, "I'm taking you in those woods, and we are going to have a really good time." I kinda laugh a bit nervously, because at the same time, I hadn't yet lost my virginity. I tell him I'd rather just stay in the car. He gets weird and angry, and it's like he's two people. Why can't we just go into the woods? I promise I won't rape and kill you. By now he's trying to laugh it off, but I had gotten incredibly creeped out. I try to play it off like I'm not ready to run away. I should have been more creeped out than I was, but I was so naive. It creeps me out now, writing this. He looks at me again and leans back in his seat and begins to start fake whining. "Oh, come on, let me just take you into the woods. It'll be fun." I'm having none of this and start getting mad, and I tell him I'm ready to go home. I finally talk him into just taking me home. He was oddly quiet the rest of the drive home. And then as he gets to my house, he proceeds to apologize profusely about it. I heard later from my friend Mark that he said I was a tease. When I told my friend about what had happened, He stopped talking to Mike, said that he had heard he could be kind of a sex maniac. How about borderline psycho? So guy, I went on a creepy first date. Let's never ever meet again. I use Tinder pretty frequently, and it's usually cool. Just meeting people, chilling, smoking with most of them. So I match with this dude named Charlie, and he seems cool. He's really cute and he plays music, which is really appealing to me, as I also sing and play piano. We talk for a little while, and I agree to meet him at his house. Mistake number 1. Why did I think it was a good idea to meet a stranger in their home? I don't drive, so I take an Uber over, and it's a decent way away, so it's kinda pricey. When he buzzes me into the apartment complex, I get this really creepy vibe, but I shook it off as nerves. I go up to the 3rd floor, and he's standing at the door. Things are cool, we're just chilling. We smoked a couple of bowls, and we're watching a movie. So he makes a move on me and I go with it. We end up on the bed, and we're obviously engaging in adult activities, when out of nowhere he wraps his hands around my neck, hard. Now that's all fine and good with me. I mean, I can dig that in the right setting, but alone in a stranger's house, when he didn't even check to see if it was cool, is not one of those settings. So I literally can't breathe, and I'm fairly certain I'm turning blue at this point, and he is just relentless. Not only is he asphyxiating me, he's now yelling in my face, "Are you scared? Are you scared?" With this wild look in his eyes. And I'm like, "Yes, I'm scared, you're trying to kill me right now." I started to struggle and he was gripping even harder. I'm not even kidding you guys. I seriously thought I was going to die. By some miracle, I wiggle out of his grasp and start screaming. He's yelling at me to calm down, and I'm frantically trying to put on my clothes. He grabs my wrist as I'm trying to leave, and I use all my strength to pull away and slam the door. As it was closing, the charming fellow used some very awful choice words to call me a name. I get home and I look in the mirror, and I have bruises all over my neck. I try to cover it up with makeup to no avail. I straight up look like I was almost strangled to death. Anyways, I blocked him and reported him on Tinder. I wish I could have done more, because I seriously think he would have killed me. I've been debating going to the police, but the bruises are gone, and it's a he said she said thing. But I'm really starting to wonder if I should, because the next girl might not be so lucky. Crazy strangler Tinder dude. Let's not ever meet again.